I like to break down the two general turns we can do on longboards into the pivot turn and the carving turn. Today, we're going to go into depth and learn about what these turns are and why we might choose one over the other at different points on the wave. This is Tip Time. Now let's get into it. So welcome back to another segment of Tip Time, where we take a deep dive into your questions. So I love it when a question's asked and it makes me rethink my approach to the wave a little bit. And that's exactly what did happen this week. Had a great question from Brian asking about the purpose of and in what situations we might choose the carving turn versus the pivoting turn. So let's get into that. I did want to firstly just give a brief explanation as to the differences between the carving turn and the pivoting turn. For the pivoting turn, I like to think about this, generally speaking, as you're pivoting around the same spot on the wave. So you can think about the tail is the part of the board that stays in the same place. Relatively speaking, of course, you'll always be moving on the wave to some degree, but then the rest of the board moves around that. So there are two key aspects that you do need to be thinking about for the pivot turn. Firstly, you start and you finish in a similar place on the wave. And secondly, you must disengage a fair amount of rail in the turn, otherwise it's not going to work. The second one here is the carving turn. And this is where we use the wave face to traverse across the wave face, either going from a high to a low position or from out on the shoulder to in towards the whitewater. The two key things I'd like you to remember for this one are that the board engages a larger portion of the rail throughout the turn and that we travel along with the board across the wave. The example that you might be used to from the shortboarding perspective is the difference between a snap and a carving turn on a shortboard. So some of this you might have seen at the great contest at Trestles that just finished up. And the differences between one of the snaps in the critical section on the lip, where the board moves dynamically in the same position on the wave in the critical section of that upper part of the lip, versus the open face carving turns, where the board carves and draws a nice line across the wave face. So that might be a useful example, but let's get into how this applies for longboarders. So the first part of this that I wanted to answer was the purpose aspect. So what purpose does the pivoting turn and the carving turn have for longboarders? The way I like to think about this is for the pivoting turn, it can be done in one spot. And because we disengage a lot of rail, we can complete the pivot turn. This turn is generally a lot faster and avoids a lot of the trouble that we might get from engaging or keeping a lot of rail engaged in the water as we're turning, which is a really, really common thing for longboards and longboarding turns in general. So I would say that the purpose of these turns is to be able to turn well and confidently when the wave face isn't opening up appropriately to be able to draw a long line or engage a lot of rail. It also produces a very sharp, dynamic and quite a radical turn, which might be something that you're looking to introduce to your surfing as a point of difference. Now, the carving turn, on the other hand, can be used to bring us from point A to point B on the wave. So we can use it to take us from one place in the wave to another in a very stylish, powerful way. As I just said, it also lends us to being a more powerful turn. Because we have more rail engaged, we can actually press more power or more force through that board, and this allows us to push more water as well. So it does look like a bigger turn and pushes more water, producing that power as well. So hopefully that helps to clarify a little bit about the purpose of these turns, but I wanted to delve into a little bit about the sections that I'm looking for these turns and why I use them in my surfing and how you can use them and implement them into your own surfing as well. I will start out though by saying I think we should incorporate both of these turns into our surfing, as we've already covered with the purpose aspect. It also brings in a really good deal of variety and that nice element to our surfing. So to be able to do both on the wave face in the appropriate sections, which we'll speak about now, I think is the best way to go. For the pivot turn, I'm looking for two specific sections. Firstly, I'm looking for a wave that's either steep or fast, where I'm as close to the critical section on the wave as possible. And the waves I'm looking for here are often quite small. In a small wave, you do have less space or area on the wave to carve across. You might not have the face of the wave to be able to fit our board into without bogging a rail or without digging in the nose or something like that. The 9-foot boards are big and they don't fit into all sections, and that's where the pivot turn can come in handy. Now, for the same reason, I'm looking to do this in the critical section of the wave. I might not want to do a carving turn, which will take me from, as we said before, point A to point B. I don't want to take myself out of the critical section. If I'm in a good place, but I think I could execute a nice turn because I've got the power and the speed, I want to be able to do a nice turn, but then continue on to do whatever I need to do from that great section that I've put myself in. So whether that be setting myself up for another nose ride, continuing down the line, or whatever that might look like. Secondly, I might look for a fat and slow section. The reason here is we know that we need speed in order to keep the rail engaged when we're doing a turn. So if we've got a slow section, the best bet is to do what I call kind of like a hoppy sort of turn, which is a pivot type turn, placing a lot of weight onto the tail and quickly giving it that burst of pressure so that we can disengage the rail, lift the nose up, and then quickly change the direction of the board. So this is a really good other way to make sure we're changing direction nice and effectively without, I guess, having to go through the hesitation and the nuisance of trying to turn a big board with a lot of rail engaged in the water slowly through it. Now for a carving turn, it's essentially the opposite of that, and that's why these two turns complement each other so well in one's surfing repertoire. But essentially I'm looking for a nice open wall that will allow me to put a lot of force through the tail and draw my line from top to bottom, or as we spoke about before, from the shoulder through to the whitewater without stressing that it's not going to work. As we said, I also need a fair bit of speed to make sure I can maintain that rail engagement, but if I'm on a bigger wave, that's typically not going to be as much of a problem, but you've still got to pick your section. You can't be going too slow. So I hope that little dive into that really helps your understanding of when to pick what turn, and maybe even establishing and clarifying the difference between those turns. I know that the carving turn was something that I used a lot in my surfing in the early days, and I really had to train myself to establish that pivoting turn later down the track. But the pivoting turn does have a lot of value, especially when you are in those tight, tricky sections. It's a great way to do a quick redirect or to add that, I guess, snappy, sharp element to your surfing, which can go a long way as well. So again, I hope that helps and can help your surfing and help to introduce that into your own surfing as well. If you have any questions like this that you want me to run through, please leave them in the comments below and we might get to that next week. And lastly, if you are looking for any coaching, just visit the link down below. We do online and face-to-face coaching if you are looking for any of that. And if you want to support the channel in any other way, please just visit the top link below. Other than that, hope you guys are all getting waves, and we'll catch you on the next one. You.